Welcome back to another episode of the Big Ten Sports Podcast. It's week 7 of the college football season, and we've got another full slate of Big Ten games to catch you up on from last weekend. I'm your co-host, Andrew Wade, and I'm joined here by my poor Nebraska buddy, Ryan. Ryan, you still alive? You still doing well? Still want to watch college football?
Yeah, I'm getting this week, so keep hope alive. But that was a nice new intro that you just did. Did you script that out before this?
You betcha.
Nice. It was better than your usual one.
Yeah, I realized I suck at it, so I figured if I write it out, it's going to sound better. But obviously, I sounded too good, so that was
It's not scripted.
damn it.
Yeah. You'll get there. No worries.
I'll try. All right, so we do have a pretty good episode. We do not have Roderick with us this weekend or this tonight. I hope if any of you were able to listen to our podcast last weekend, you thoroughly enjoyed listening to myself, Ryan, and Roderick talk about college football. Roderick is hilarious, and we will definitely be having him back on the podcast at another time. But for now, you're going to have to listen to just me and Ryan talk today, and we'll work on getting some surprise guests on here in the next couple of weeks as well. On today's episode,
Dude,
we
you
have...
probably just lost like half the people when you said Roderick wasn't going to be on this week. You should have waited.
Yeah, I should have been like, Roderick's potentially going to be on.
He might be. Stay tuned and see you later.
Yeah. Okay, guys, Roderick might be on later. Just wait. We don't know. I shot him a text. Maybe he'll jump on.
There it is.
All right. So if you still haven't left us, thank you. We have a fun episode today, basically going through our standard stuff, right? So we're going to talk through our betting, which, for the love of God, thank you. We finally did decent this weekend. Talk through our highlights from the weekend. So what happened in the last week of college football in the Big Ten. Go through our segments, which includes our Kansas Watch, our mascot game, and the NFL Draft. And then finally wrap it up with covering this upcoming weekend's Big Ten games, which, from the looks of it, could be pretty interesting depending on how a few games turn out. We're starting to get a good sense of what each team brings to the table. The first couple of weeks, it was a little confusing. So definitely glad to start seeing some nice Big Ten games take place.
Yeah, for sure. So before we start, and I think you probably want to start with Iowa because you're an Iowa fan. I probably should have asked this last week, but do Iowa people still consider Minnesota a rivalry game?
Not really. I mean, so I would not consider it a true rivalry game in the sense I don't really get pissed off about it. Minnesota is typically not that good, and the history of Iowa, Minnesota, the recent history at least, has been pretty much all Iowa. So it's not that big of a deal. And then the other problem is Minnesota fans don't really get up for it either. I mean, you heard Roderick. He doesn't seem to really care. I talked to a few other Minnesota fans when I was writing some articles this week, and they were just – honestly, they were more upset about Jimmy Butler, Joe Mauer, and the Vikings just being terrible. So the fact that Minnesota was playing a football game was just like not a big deal to them.
Yeah, I was thinking more like, so Iowa won the game, obviously, 48-31, and they got that stupid pig. But after that, I went and looked at some of the stats, and Iowa's 14-4 in the last 18 games in that series. Like, it doesn't really seem like a rivalry at this point. It seems kind of just like a game that Iowa's supposed to win, and no one actually cares.
Pretty much. That's a good way of summing it up. I will say, though, Minnesota still leads the overall series by a decent chunk of games. They mostly dominated Iowa for the first 60 years of the last century, but obviously no one gives a crap about those games back then. So it is interesting, but yeah, I really don't care. It's pretty much, if you lose to Minnesota, then your season's probably not going to be very good. So
yeah. Also, one more fun fact. When I was doing that research, I also noticed that in 1903, Minnesota beat Iowa 75-0. Like, 75, no one throws the ball.
Yeah, like that was before the forward pass was like a real thing. That means Iowa just had to have laid down like a dog and just barked as everyone just ran around them.
Yep. But that was 115 years ago. Iowa's better now, so
they are better now. They're a lot better than a bunch of teams in the Big Ten, including Nebraska. But we can harp on Nebraska here in a little bit.
I'm sure you will.
I definitely will. It's going to be fun. But Nebraska did get you a win in the betting lines. Barely. They did cover, although they lost to Wisconsin. You did go 4-2, and I also went 4-2. You lost on the Minnesota bet. I lost on the Wisconsin bet. And then we both lost on Ohio State, who it kind of sucks betting on Ohio State because they have such large spreads that it's almost ridiculous to expect them to cover every single time. And they're barely missing out on covering some of these big spreads. So unfortunate, but we did go 4-2. You are still below 500 at 26 and 28, and I am above 500 at 29 and 25. Good for me. I'm still better.
Yeah, I'm running out. I mean, the season's only half over, so we got plenty of time left. But we gotta start picking different games if I'm gonna make any ground up on you.
Yeah, I don't really have any need to pick different games, so it's really up to you at this point.
Working on it.
If I was a real dick, I would just pick every game that you pick.
Yeah, that's why you have to pick first.
Fair enough. If you ever surpass me, you can then pick first.
All right, sounds good, man.
All right, so jumping into the highlights from last week, and we already touched on this a little bit, but Iowa won the big giant bronze pig as they beat Minnesota 48-31. The game was a lot closer than it should have been. Iowa basically, I don't know what the hell they were doing, but they let Minnesota in the game multiple times on some really well. The first one was kind of not really dumb, but had a big bad interception from Nate Stanley, and then forced sack fumble from Minnesota on Nate Stanley as well, and that kind of kept Minnesota in the game. Northwestern did it again. We've talked about this a lot. Northwestern is a sneaky team that can always beat the big team that is expected to win. They upset Michigan State. We knew that was going to happen. Michigan State is not a very good team, and they finally dropped out of the rankings. Illinois beat Rutgers 38-7. Rutgers sucks, so that game just doesn't really matter. They really don't deserve to be in the Big Ten. And then
yeah, I don't. Did you watch any of that?
Why would I watch that game?
Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe it's painful.
Yeah, I don't even could watch it. I don't even know if it was on. I definitely didn't see any of it.
Yeah, I think they were at the same time as the Iowa game, and so on the Big Ten Network, Iowa was playing.
Right.
But yeah, I
don't watch it anyways. They were selling tickets for $8, so they can't even get people to go to it.
Yeah, we need to. You know what we should do? We should actually try to pick either the worst games or the best games, one of the two, and try to go to a couple games each year.
Well, I'm going to Nebraska and Northwestern this week, so that might be one of the worst games.
That's gonna be bad for you, man.
Yeah, it's not good. But anyways, yeah, we can beat Maryland last week too if we want to keep moving on. Pretty solid win for Michigan. Doubled up Maryland's score, 142-21. My takeaway, I think we've figured out who Maryland is now. They had a great win, it looks like, in week 1 against Texas, but they're an average team. So,
dude, I cannot believe Texas beat Oklahoma.
I couldn't really believe it either. But then, I'm starting to question if Oklahoma's really that good.
That's fair. Well, I mean, for now, we can let Texas soak in the glory. That freshman kicker has some balls, man.
Texas is back. Texas won 1 game. This is a Big Ten podcast, but let's see how Texas finishes the season. How they play against I don't know, West Virginia and Tech and a couple other teams before we say that they're back. They're 4-1. It's not even the season.
That's fair. I mean, they are 10th or 11th in rankings now.
9th. They're up to 9.
That's incredible. Yeah, Big 12 teams are never going to be able to compete with any of the big dogs. They don't play defense, man.
I don't know if you can say that though, because Oklahoma was literally 1 play away from being in the national championship game last year.
Yeah, but I would put Ohio State, Alabama, Clemson. Well, maybe not Clemson right now, but I would put Ohio State or Alabama's offense up against any Big 12 school's offense. Plus, they have better defenses.
I agree with you. You can't say that never happened. It happened until last year was literally 1 play.
That's fair. I'll give you that.
All right.
Well, moving on. Speaking of Ohio State, they beat Indiana, but Indiana did put up a fight. They at least got 25 points. I don't really have much to say here. I didn't get a chance to watch this game. Again, I was busy watching the Iowa-Minnesota game, and then after Iowa won, I was starting to think about how pissed off I was going to be the next day if the Broncos lost the Jets. So I did not get a chance to watch it.
Which
I don't know
did
if you did.
happen, so you were probably pretty
Yeah,
pissed. Yeah.
dude, I was livid.
Oh, I'm sure you were. Welcome to my life every week. Um, yeah, sorry. Also, seems like I might be having some audio problems, so sorry about that.
You
But
sound a lot better now.
okay, I don't know what's going on. But anyways, yeah, I mean, I think like the cool thing to watch about Ohio State now, and like, yeah, Indiana put up a fight, but I mean, it wasn't really. Um, dude, Dwayne Haskins is so good though. Like he threw 6 more TD passes last week. I looked at it a little bit this week too. He's currently projected third in the Heisman voting behind Tua Tagovailoa from Alabama, who seems to be running away with it a little bit, and then Kyler Murray I saw is still projected second, but after that,
How?
I don't know. I haven't watched enough Oklahoma to know like how much of a standout he is, but Dwayne Haskins is a freaking stud. Like on the season so far, he has 72% completion percentage, 25 touchdowns, and 4 picks. Going into Indiana, he only had 2 interceptions on the season. So, like, yeah, I mean, I'd be surprised if he wasn't in the top 3 when they actually vote at the end of the season.
It's interesting because I've heard this from a couple different people, but Tua actually has the issue of Alabama being too good,
Yep,
where he's not going to play in big games, and the games aren't going to be that close. So Haskins does have that. He has the opportunity to have a few big moments, especially with if Michigan can stay high in the rankings, the Big Ten championship game, depending on who makes it into that. There's opportunities for Haskins to play big and very big games,
that's
and
true.
Tua is basically just going to be playing the first half of every game. So
That's true. Unless somebody like LSU or maybe in the SEC championship, a team like Georgia, like gives Tua that Heisman moment, he's probably not going to have many chances to do that just because Alabama is that good. And if they're blowing everybody out by 40, he's going to lose minutes too. I mean, Haskins has had that so far, but probably not as much in the Big Ten as Tua is going to have the rest of the way. So, I mean, he has a chance to catch up a little bit, but yeah, dude, Tua might be on too good of a team. That's like you said, that may be his big problem. But yeah, something to watch. It'd be, I'm not an Ohio State guy at all, but it'd be cool to see the Big Ten get another Heisman winner if he can keep it up.
absolutely. And then do you want to cover your Nebraska Cornhuskers?
Yeah, I wasn't completely disheartened until Jonathan Taylor's like 80, I think it was an 88-yard run, end of the third quarter that just kind of busted the game open. Nebraska was in the game for like, and when I say in the game, it's a loose term. Like they weren't really in the game, but it was never like over until that moment. I think the big takeaway for Nebraska is Adrian Martinez. He has a live arm. He's pretty quick. He's just learning his reads and learning the offense, and then he has to roll out pretty much every play because Nebraska's offensive line struggled. We'll talk about Wisconsin when we talk about Wisconsin-Michigan this week. That's going to be the big game in the Big Ten, but I think Wisconsin's in big trouble this week, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But yeah, I mean, I didn't really have hope going into the Nebraska-Wisconsin game, and Nebraska's bad. I knew that already. There are some encouraging things that I got to take away from that game, and it was at least fun to see them live for the first time this year.
I heard Adrian Martinez played pretty well.
He did. He has a good arm. I mean, like I said, he's a true freshman. He was hurt for a couple games, so he's still learning the offense, learning his reads, but he's talented. And when you have a quarterback to build around and he's a true freshman, that gives you hope for the future. So the young guys, I think, are the exciting piece. There was some questionable stuff going on in the game. Like Devine Ozigbo, he's a Nebraska running back. 2 weeks ago, he was like the bell cow guy. And then last week, he only had a couple carries the entire game. And I do think Nebraska started throwing the ball a little bit too early, but I mean, they weren't going to win, so they were probably just saying, let's try and get into a little bit of a meet and keep up. But yeah, he's good. He's talented, and having that cornerstone that's already in place, as long as we can keep the recruits that we have this year that don't get scared off by such a terrible team, then there's hope in the future.
Absolutely, it'll be interesting to see how Scott Frost can turn this season into a positive for next season. I think that'll be probably the biggest thing. It's a good opportunity, as you said, for young players to play and get a lot of good experience. So not hopefully, I don't really care if Nebraska does well ever, but hopefully for the sake of you.
It's better for both Wisconsin and Iowa if Nebraska's a good team.
I'd agree with that. And just for the Big Ten West, because that division sucks, man. It's just not that good.
Yep. So yeah, let's keep going.
So jumping into our three segments, Kansas Watch. I was actually holding my breath, thinking maybe they
No.
actually have a chance. They might actually beat West Virginia. They did not. They are now 2-4, and I'm slowly getting closer to owing you a lot of beer, Josh beer, and apparently I owe Jake Kinney beer because he wanted to take me up on this bet as well. So I'm gonna owe at the end of this probably a 24 pack of beer to people, but so that kind of sucks. They have a bye week this week before facing the Red Raiders, and Josh actually requested that I talk about Notre Dame for a second
Why?
on one of our calls, and I told him the exact thing. I said, why the hell would I talk about Notre Dame? But I gave him the option, and this is a public announcement to him that if he's willing to cheer for Kansas for every single game and the basketball season, even if they play UNC, I will mention Notre Dame in a good light soon.
This is you don't even like Kansas. This is stupid.
It's kind of fun, though. I like
Okay.
having a team that I don't give a crap about. I like to root for them. It's kind of interesting. They're the underdog. They got a chip on their shoulder.
Not in basketball, but anyways, we're digressing into a Kansas conversation. I don't care. In the Kansas game, just so people are clear, against West Virginia was not close. Kansas lost by 16 points. West Virginia threw 3 interceptions in the red zone, so they should have won by about 40, and Kansas is still terrible.
I disagree, but I'm going to jump into the mascots. I have a couple good ones for you that I think you're probably going to guess anyways, so that kind of sucks. But the first one up is Southern Mississippi.
Golden Eagles.
Okay, impressive. Touche. Old Dominion.
Monarchs.
This is not even fair. I need to be able to use FCS programs. All right, I'm just scrolling through
Old
a list
Dominion.
here.
Well, you can use FCS. Old Dominion is an FCS program.
That doesn't make sense.
What are you talking about?
Well, I'm on a Wikipedia page, and it apparently is not very accurate because it says literally FBS programs, and then it talks about FCS later. So,
Maybe they moved up. They might have moved up.
So you know the mascots, but you're not smart enough to know what division they're in. All right, let me check. Screw it. I don't really care enough.
I think they did move up. I just checked. Good
Perfect.
job, Old Dominion.
Crushed it. Now he's getting crushed by everyone. All right, what about Louisiana Monroe?
Louisiana Monroe.
I got you on this one.
They're the Warhawks.
Oh.
We already did that one. You're an idiot.
There's not a lot of good FBS programs. Let me go to FCS.
Dude, I thought you could do FCS.
Okay, well, let me try to find these teams, and I'm going to...
All right, save it for next week. We got to keep going.
No, I'm going to give you one.
All right, give me one.
Iona College.
Gales.
This is stupid. All right, let's go to the NFL draft.
Yeah, you're not going to beat me on that. All right, I got one easy, well, probably 2 easy ones for you, and I'm going to pay homage to some teams this week. So we're going to start you off, Marcus Sherrills.
Dude, I quit. I am so over this. I am not good at this game anymore. I used to be able to guess these immediately.
Yeah, you're not good. Do you want me to tell you?
Yes, I do.
He went to Minnesota.
Oh, I see what you're doing now. All right.
All right, next one. Mohamed Sanu. This is a big name guy. He's good.
I know. This is going to put me into depression. I think I need to study the NFL draft again.
You say that every week and then you don't.
Well, I've been busy, okay? I got underwater hockey practice. I have articles to write, and I have a full-time job. Dick.
Underwater hockey is the dumbest game ever created, so you can stop doing it.
All right, where is Mohamed Sanu from?
Rutgers.
Okay, go with the next one.
All right, this is the last one, and this is one that you should get. Kelechi Osemele.
USC?
No, Iowa State.
Oh, he's get drafted like a week last year.
Oh, okay, I knew that.
I don't follow Iowa State.
They're from Iowa. You should know. You're from Iowa. You should know that.
All right. You know what? Screw you. I'm going to start studying the NFL draft starting in a month and then I'll be really good at this.
Started in a month. Okay, so the last week of the season, you'll be ready to go.
Absolutely.
Good deal.
I think I've only gotten 1 or 2 from the entire list.
Yeah, you're terrible.
That's fair. All right, let's jump into the games this week's slate. We have Iowa versus Indiana at 10 a.m. on ESPN2. Indiana is 4-2. Iowa is 4-1. The kind of the big matchup here is going to be the offenses, the passing games really. So Indiana's Peyton Ramsey. He's a mobile quarterback. He has a good arm. He's thrown for over 1,300 yards already, and he's ran for 180. And the reason why that's important is Iowa is starting 2 freshman corners this week. They started 2 freshman corners last week. They played okay. I mean, Julius Brent's graded out as the second best player in the game. Riley Moss got freshman player of the week, but Riley Moss got picked on the entire first half by Zach Annexstad, who's not that good despite, being able to start at, Minnesota. So it'll be interesting to see how Ramsey attacks that secondary. And then the fact that he's mobile is going to be interesting just because Iowa is really struggling with their linebackers. They lost their middle linebacker, Jack Hockaday. They lost one of their outside linebackers, Nick Neiman. And then the backup middle linebacker, Monty Jones, actually got a targeting call, and he is not playing the first half. So that'll be a really interesting matchup. Yeah, it was kind of a bullcrap call. Kirk Ferentz basically came out and said, I don't really care. I'm going to teach my players to tackle the right way. I didn't think that was a good call. So it is what it is, but Iowa is actually giving 5.5 points to Indiana while they're playing in Indiana. I don't like that line a ton, but I think Iowa truly is a lot better team than Indiana is. So I think Iowa's going to win by more than 5.5 points. I'm going to pick Iowa in this game.
Fair enough. I might have missed it, but why is Iowa starting 2 freshman corners?
Yeah, so Matt Hankins, their one starting corner, he's kind of out with a wrist injury. He has a cast on his wrist right now, but he's still available for the game. And Michael Ojemudia is not playing, and there's kind of a mystery behind that. They said he has some injury issues and he's not fully 100%, but he's not listed on some of the injury reports. I think he was playing pretty well throughout the season, so I don't really know kind of what's going on there. But like I said, the 2 freshman corners aren't doing that bad. It's kind of an interesting youth movement and kind of exciting for the Iowa secondary to see 2 young guys doing pretty well. So I'm not really sure what's going on.
I mean,
but
it's exciting, but it's also a challenge this week. I mean, you talked about Peyton Ramsey. So Big Ten, Indiana's ranked 3rd overall in passing. Their total offense, they're averaging over 400 yards a game and 28 points a game. So that's not starting 2 freshmen in an away game against a good offense. That's tough. But
it is. Minnesota has some good wide receivers, and they, for the most part, held up to the test. But you're right; they weren't facing a very good quarterback, so that'll be really the big difference here. But I think Iowa's pass rush is going to be too much for Indiana, and it's going to put a lot of pressure on Ramsey. And if they can somehow contain him, I think Iowa should be able to easily win this game.
Yeah, I mean, fair enough. I'm going to go with you mostly because I think Iowa's probably still not as respected as they should be. I think Iowa should – I mean, we both think Iowa should still be undefeated. And I think their trap game is really next week against Maryland before they play Penn State. So
absolutely.
Yeah, I think they'll be ready to go this week, and I think they'll put it on Indiana a little bit. So Iowa to cover, despite the fact that they're giving 5.5 for me too.
Yeah, and Iowa's actually getting – I mean, they were the 26th ranked team going into the Wisconsin game, and somehow when you lose to Wisconsin, a ranked Wisconsin, you actually drop, which I think is ridiculous. But they're getting votes again. If they win, they should be in the top 25.
Yeah, I mean, I think they should be in the top 25 now. That's
what I agree. Yeah, I mean, the teams 17 through 25 are kind of garbage anyways. It's kind of a wish-wash. No teams are really going to be that competitive.
Well, dude, it just takes me back to a couple of weeks ago when Boston College got ranked after beating Wake Forest, and then we saw how shit Boston College was. Like, I don't know what these people are thinking when they're doing their voting.
Very fair. It'll be interesting once the first college football playoff ranking comes out, see where everyone's at.
Yeah, for sure.
The team that Iowa beat last week, Minnesota, is taking on number 3 Ohio State. Zach Annexstad against Iowa, he actually played pretty well. Does have a lot of weaknesses. The interesting thing I noticed was that he airmailed a lot of balls. So if anything was deep down the field, it kind of just fluttered up in the air, and that's how Iowa actually managed to get 4 interceptions. Only one of them, I would say, no, I would say maybe 2 were good coverage plays, and the other 2 were just like, here's a center fielder just playing catch with Zach Annexstad. So it'll be interesting to see how he handles Ohio State, who definitely has more athletic players in their defense. They do run the Wildcat a lot with converted tight end Seth Green, and it was actually relatively effective.
Dude, what is a converted tight end?
I wasn't sure how to say this, but he was a quarterback and now he's a tight end, so he can throw the ball, but he's also 6'5" and can catch it. So
yeah, and he threw one of the 4 interceptions, right?
He did, yeah. He fluttered that thing up pretty high. definitely a good point. But yeah, the weird thing about this one, so Vegas does a pretty darn good job, as we know. I don't understand how they do it. I don't understand what kind of magic they're pulling behind the scenes. But this line is right on that line of I don't know if I want to take it or not. Ohio State is favored 29.5 points. And that is just a little too rich for me. I hate going against Ohio State, but I'm going to have to pick Minnesota here. That's a lot of points. I don't think Minnesota's that bad.
I don't know, man. You remember what Maryland did to Minnesota? Like, Minnesota's weird. I think Iowa is good and athletic, but Ohio State's on another level of good and athletic and being at home. We already talked about Haskins, and their running backs. They probably got 2 running backs that are going to be draft picks that are going to play in this game too. So I don't think Minnesota is going to have much of a fight in this one, and I think Ohio State's going to continue rolling. Ohio State really doesn't have anyone on their schedule anymore for the rest of the season until the Michigan game. So, I mean, their thing and what they got to prove to the voters is that they can beat teams down, not only beat them just in case they do slip up somewhere. So I think they're going to crush Minnesota. And because I have to pick against you and I think they're going to crush Minnesota, I'm picking Ohio State.
That's fair. But 30 points is still a crushing. You beat them by 28 points. That's still a big this is a frustrating line for me. The over-under is 59.5. And with that big of a spread, though, I would absolutely bet the over on this one.
Oh, I would too. 100% I would bet the over. I think Ohio State's probably going to put up 40-some by themselves, if not more. And
that was my thought. And if nothing else, Minnesota can get some garbage time touchdowns. So,
yeah, I mean, I think so. The one thing we didn't talk about very much is that Minnesota's pass rush is pretty bad. They're one of the worst teams in the Big Ten in terms of sacking the quarterback. And if Haskins has time, he's good in the pocket. He's good out of the pocket. But you let him pick his receivers that are more athletic than Minnesota secondary, and you can't get pressure. I think he's just going to throw all over him.
That's fair. Well, maybe the one bright spot of me probably losing this bet is that Tate Martell is going to play.
It's been a while since we got to talk about Tate, so maybe you're right.
I'm going to try to name drop him every single time we talk.
That's my goal. That's the one goal in your life you're accomplishing right now.
I'm crushing it. And a team that is not crushing it is Rutgers. This team is so freaking terrible. I didn't even really write anything down for this game because I'm taking Maryland. I'm going to take every team to cover against Rutgers every single week, no matter what the spread. Maryland is favored 25.5 points. And this one is I will give it this. This is a kind of a weird line because, again, we don't know how good, Maryland's kind of an average team, right? They lost to Michigan. They lost to Temple, but they beat Texas. What kind of team is Maryland? Rutgers is just so bad. You can never actually pick Rutgers. I think whoever actually picks Rutgers and gets them right deserves a prize on this podcast.
What's the prize going to be?
Well, we've already bet a lot of beer. Might as well keep making it more.
All right. So even if I lose most of the betting, I can still win beer. So I'm going to take Rutgers. Reason. There's absolutely no reason besides the fact that it's a 25.5 point spread, and it's a game that Maryland's probably not going to care about. So, and Rutgers only lost to Indiana by 7 a couple weeks ago. So they got smoked last week by Illinois, but they only lost to Indiana by 7. So they're going to cover 25.5.
That was a stupid game, though. But whatever, we can. I'm going to win that, and it's going to be great. But
Oh,
Nebraska
okay.
is taking on Northwestern, and you're actually going to be going to that game. I think this is a tough game again for Nebraska. Northwestern is always tough. They're coming off a big win from last week. The only thing I will say is that they don't play necessarily well against bad competition, right? Like they play really well against ranked teams, against Iowa for some messed up reason, but playing against a team like Nebraska, who is obviously in one of their worst seasons in the history of the program, I just don't know how well they actually are going to play on this one. Northwestern is favored by 4 points, which means I basically would have to say Nebraska is going to win. And
That's
that would
not
mean,
that's not what that means. It means they have to lose by less than 4.
yeah, but I feel like it's either going to be a blowout or Nebraska is going to win.
Okay, so which one is it?
I don't know. It's really, do I want to trust in Scott Frost and his motivational tactics that have failed to this
It's
point?
really working so far.
Yeah. I'm going to take Northwestern.
Yeah, I figured you would. We already talked a little bit about what Nebraska is in their recap last week. We talked about Martinez. We talked about their running game. Nebraska has like 4 running backs right now, and you never really know which one's going to play or which one's going to take the lead. 2 weeks ago, it was Ozigbo. Last week, he barely played. What we didn't talk about was Nebraska's secondary, and yeah, it's just really not very good. So they have their 2 top corners are Lamar Jackson, DiCaprio Bootle. Seeing them in person and actually being able to watch the entire field the whole game, they were giving Wisconsin's receivers a pretty big cushion. Even if they were pressing off the line, they were backing off pretty quick. So I will probably look for a lot of quick passes out into the flats for Northwestern if that's going to be the case again. But even if it's not, Northwestern is a passing team. They're terrible at rushing. They're last in the Big Ten, but
In their defense,
Nebraska,
they did lose their leading rusher to retirement midseason.
I don't care, but like, I mean, that sucks. That sucks that, he felt he had to do that, and it sucks for Northwestern, but it just means that they're not going to be a rushing team. And I mean, that's great for Nebraska, other than the fact that Thorson lit it up essentially against Michigan State last week. Nebraska really has to get pressure, and I don't know if they're going to be able to do that. They couldn't. They got a little bit of pressure, but not a lot on Hornibrook last week. They were just lucky that Hornibrook couldn't hit any of his receivers. I don't know why this line is so low. I really don't. Northwestern's 2-3, but they should probably have a winning record. Nebraska's 0-5, and there's 2 games there that they could have won. I can't say that they should have won anymore. Like I used to say, they should have beat Colorado, but who knows? The only thing that's going to make me pick Nebraska here, and I am going to pick Nebraska again, is when a line doesn't make sense, it usually means Vegas knows something that the rest of us don't. So because Northwestern's only a 4-point favorite, I think Vegas is probably banking on taking more bets on the Northwestern side, and they think they have an advantage there. So I'm going to trust that that's going to hold true here, and I'm going to pick Nebraska again, but I really don't know why.
That's fair. I have a really important question for you.
Yeah.
Do you think Nebraska's Lamar Jackson is better at corner than the Ravens' Lamar Jackson?
At corner?
Yeah. Give the Ravens Lamar Jackson 6 weeks to train as a corner. Which one would you take?
6 weeks?
Dude, the guy's an athlete.
I know, he's a crazy athlete. Oh, also fun fact, Nebraska was in that Lamar Jackson's top 3 when he was deciding on colleges. So,
oh my gosh, can you imagine if they actually got him?
Dude, everything would be so different.
The future Nebraska football would be forever changed.
Yep. I think we just recruit all Lamar Jacksons and then just take whichever ones we can get. But yeah, it would have been nice if Ravens Lamar Jackson would have picked Nebraska instead of Louisville.
God, he would have made Iowa look bad.
Yeah, Iowa really struggles against fast people, and he's real fast. But
dude, because there's all a bunch of farmers.
So is Nebraska.
Also fair.
But that's why Nebraska recruits nationally. Clearly, that's working. Dude, so fun fact, like Nebraska Lamar Jackson, the corner, he was a 4-star like coming out of high school. He was supposed to be really good, and like you can tell that he's athletic and he has talent. He just hasn't figured out how to put it together. He got his first career interception this year earlier. He would be better at corner after 6 weeks. I mean, if you want to give Lamar like 6 months, they're both Lamar. If you want to give Ravens Lamar 6 months, it probably switches. But Yeah, it's not that quick of a transition.
You gave a really well thought out answer to a really dumb
A really
question.
stupid question. Like, dude, I hear all your stupid questions, and I feel like I have to think them out so I can make you sound even dumber. But
I've been holding that one in the whole time you're talking about Nebraska. I was like, where can I fit this question in?
you're an idiot.
All right. So Michigan State is taking on number 8 Penn State. This could have been a using finger quotes, a good game had Michigan State remained ranked, but they're really not that good. Their 3 wins this year are against Central Michigan, Indiana, and Utah State. Utah State actually beat BYU last week, so Utah State isn't the worst game, but still it's Utah State.
That was Utah State's only loss, and they beat BYU 45-20, and BYU beat Wisconsin. So I know we're taking a chain of events there, but Utah State's not that bad.
That's fair. I know we've talked a lot about, or I've talked a lot about Trace McSorley being bad, so I wanted to give him some love on this podcast. He has graded out as one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the Big Ten, according to Pro Football Focus. So he hasn't been doing that bad for a college quarterback. I'll give you some credit. He's not the worst. He just sucks at. He's just not that good at throwing.
So question: now that you've understood that Trace McSorley is a good football player, is he going to get drafted?
No.
Is he going to get drafted not as a quarterback?
Depends on what he runs, but I would say no.
If he runs a 4.46.
Yes, absolutely. He's going to be drafted by the Patriots.
As what?
As another white former quarterback, wide receiver.
All right, fair enough.
That would be pretty interesting.
Yeah, he's clearly athletic. Those things just don't ever seem to work out. Unless the Patriots.
He doesn't have a really good arm.
The Patriots converted a lacrosse player into a wide receiver, so they can probably do it with Trace.
They've done it all, man. I mean, Julian Edelman was a quarterback at Kent State, so good for them. They also had who was their wide receiver for a long time, who they put at corner for a little bit, just for the hell of it.
I don't remember.
It was number 80. Whatever. It doesn't really matter. The big thing with this game is Michigan State's pass defense is garbage. They're 123rd in the nation. And as we've talked about, Trace McSorley is a good college quarterback. So this line, though, is 13.5 points. They're going to Penn State. Outside of the Appalachian State game, Penn State's played pretty damn well this entire season, and they were arguably a couple stupid James Franklin calls away from beating Ohio State. So I'm going to take Penn State to actually cover this one.
Yeah, Michigan State's in trouble. 1, they're not that good. And 2, they're beat up. So LJ Scott, he's the running back. He's questionable. I think I read something this week, he's only played 30 snaps all season. So if he misses, they're in trouble. Their offensive line, even if he does play, is beat up. So they're in more trouble. Penn State's going to be pissed because they haven't played since they lost that Ohio State game. And honestly, they still do have a chance to get into one of those weird ties in the East where there's multiple one-loss teams and they can still somehow go to the Big Ten championship like they did a couple of years ago against Wisconsin. I'm picking Penn State to cover this, and I think it's going to prove once and for all that Michigan State is nothing but early season hype.
Dude, that's fair. I really don't like LJ Scott. That bastard scored the touchdown that beat Iowa in the Big Ten championship game that ruined my weekend, lost me a lot of money in Vegas, and cost Iowa one of their best seasons.
Dude, I remember that. We all told you that was a stupid bet in the first place, but you made it anyways.
I almost won. If they wouldn't have...
That doesn't matter.
They took the ball for 11 minutes and just rammed it down Iowa's throat. You know how hard that is to watch as a fan who also has money on the team? Oh, God, that was frustrating.
Well, if it makes you feel better, he might not play this week.
Good. Screw him.
That's terrible.
I'm kidding. He's a college kid.
Terrible.
All right. So Purdue is playing Illinois. Purdue is still 2-3, but we've talked about this a lot. Purdue's actually a pretty good team. Illinois does suck, but they are going to Illinois, and Illinois is getting 10.5 points. I think Purdue is going to beat them by a lot more than 10.5. Illinois actually has played pretty well at home. They played pretty well against a solid South Florida team, but it's kind of like Rutgers. Illinois is Rutgers light.
Yeah, Illinois is bad until they prove that they're not. I agree.
Yeah, so I'm taking Purdue in this one.
Yeah, I mean, so you talk about South Florida. South Florida's 5-0 now, and they did play South Florida tough at home. But I have to believe that Purdue, since they beat Nebraska by 14 at Nebraska, can beat Illinois by more. Otherwise, like if Illinois like stomps Purdue this game, then like Nebraska might only win 1 or 2 games all year. So I'm gonna believe that Purdue is good, even though you said we think they are. I have no idea if they are, but yeah, Purdue's gonna win this game by more than 14. They only have to win by 11, but it's gonna be more than 14.
I like it. You know what's something we haven't talked about on this podcast a lot?
What you
We
got?
talk a lot about Rutgers sucking and Illinois sucking, but Nebraska is the only team that doesn't have any wins.
Hey, that's true.
It literally just clicked with me. We're making so much fun of Rutgers, but they actually managed to win a game.
They beat Texas State.
Nebraska lost to
I'll tell you
Akron.
what. No, they didn't get to play Akron.
Who was the team they lost to that was really bad?
It doesn't matter.
I'm going to look it up.
It was Troy.
They lost to Troy.
They did lose to Troy. Troy is better than Texas State. Texas State's a bad team that's not even FBS. So I'll make a deal with you. Nebraska plays Bethune-Cookman in a couple weeks. If they lose to Bethune-Cookman, we can have a whole episode detailing how bad Nebraska is.
I love it.
All right.
That will be their first win of the season.
I might regret this.
This would be great. I'll just rip on Nebraska for 45 minutes.
So, yeah, I mean, we don't have to talk about Nebraska anymore. I think we all realize what's happening. But they do have a few winnable games in their next 3. So they've got Northwestern this week. They get Minnesota after that, and then they play Bethune-Cookman. So those are 3 winnable games. If they can get 2 of them before they go to Ohio State, I'll feel good.
That's so sad that it's come to this.
It really is, but that's where I am.
Well, enough about Nebraska. We don't even give Rutgers that much time in the last 6 episodes. So and they're a better team technically. So we're gonna jump over to number 15 Wisconsin at number 12 Michigan. This is obviously the best game on the Big Ten slate this week. It's a huge game with a lot of implications for both teams. Michigan needs to get this win. That way, they can be within that Big Ten East hunt in terms of getting into the Big Ten championship game. This is a big game for Wisconsin because if they lose, that means Iowa is right on their tail, but they do have at least a little bit of a cushion. So from the Iowa perspective, obviously I want Wisconsin to lose. Weirdly enough, Jim Harbaugh, and we talked a lot about this, but he's not that good of a head coach in theory. But at home, he's 17-4. He has lost to Ohio State twice and Michigan State twice. Against Wisconsin, he's been 1-1 overall. So I like the idea that they're going to Michigan. They're playing at night. Jim Harbaugh's pretty good at Michigan, and their defense is outstanding. So it'll be interesting to see how they match up against Wisconsin, considering Michigan is number 1 in defensive passing yards allowed and number 6 in defensive rushing yards. And the big matchup I want to see is Rashawn Gary versus Wisconsin's line.
You're talking about number 1 and number 6 in the country.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, so not the Big Ten. Michigan's defense is elite nationally.
Yes.
I think this is a terrible matchup for Wisconsin. So I've seen 2 Wisconsin games in person this year. I honestly struggle to think of a worse game for Wisconsin in the Big Ten than going to Michigan. Michigan doesn't have a weakness on defense. So, and honestly, until the third quarter in one big run, Jonathan Taylor really wasn't dominating a Nebraska team that has a pretty bad rush defense. So you want to put him up against the number 1 defense, probably the number 1 overall defense in the country. His greatness is not going to make up for the fact that Wisconsin's offense really isn't that good. And then you put on top of the fact that Wisconsin's secondary is lacking a little bit, and Wisconsin's pass rush is not great either. All right. Oh, man, I like Wisconsin. I think Wisconsin's a good team, but I think this matchup is terrible for them.
I 100% agree. I mean, if you're Michigan, what do? Load the box, make sure you stop Jonathan Taylor, force Hornibrook to actually throw the ball, but you're going to stop that anyways because your corners are going to be, are better than Wisconsin's wide receivers. I mean, it's just not a good matchup for, like you said, for Wisconsin.
And I mean, you could say that about most teams that play Michigan just because Michigan's defense is that good. But
fair.
I mean, you look at Northwestern. Northwestern took the lead in that game by 17 points because they have a quarterback that Michigan has to respect. I don't think Michigan's going to respect Hornibrook. And unless he comes out and proves us all wrong and really has a good game, like I don't know. I don't see it for Wisconsin in this game. The line is 8.5. I think Michigan's D line is going to cause Wisconsin problems no matter what they try and do. And I can't see Wisconsin keeping this close into the fourth quarter. Like Wisconsin should have lost at Iowa. I think they will lose to Michigan, and I really don't see it being close late. So I'm taking Michigan to cover 8.5.
I am also taking Michigan to cover 8.5. I 100% agree with everything you're saying. Weirdly enough, Hornibrook actually gets some pretty high marks from Pro Football Focus. I don't understand why, because he's not that good.
He hasn't been throwing interceptions. Like that helps, but like his completion percentage against a bad Nebraska secondary was less than 60. So you put him against good players, like I don't see it.
What's interesting though about Pro Football Focus though is they don't grade on necessarily the completion. They look at the play as a whole, right? So did he make the right read, and did he make the right throw? Was it on target? That kind of stuff. So I don't know how he has been ranked relatively high, but he is. I mean, I wasn't very impressed with anything he did against Iowa outside of the last drive where he was making some pretty clutch throws, but it's not even going to be close. So I think Michigan is definitely going to win this game. It'll make me feel a lot better about Iowa losing to Wisconsin because they are one game away from being in the lead for the Big Ten. So it'll be hopefully Michigan will win.
Yeah, I think they will. I think this one's going to be another one where, it wakes people up on both sides of Michigan's good. Their only loss is still to Notre Dame. They struggled in one game against Northwestern, like we said, but
Notre Dame is good.
They're so they look good. Although I did hear something this week, and people are talking about this for no reason, but they're basically saying if 5 teams are on the table, Notre Dame's going to get left out of the college football playoff.
Oh, no way.
Not a chance.
They would make so much money off Notre Dame being in the college football playoff.
100%. You're not going to take. Honestly, I don't even think they would take Clemson this year over Notre Dame. Clemson's schedule is garbage.
That's actually what I was hearing. So theoretically, if you're looking at 5 teams, right, it would be probably Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, Clemson, and Notre Dame. If Ohio State runs the table,
time out. Who did you say?
Clemson and Notre Dame.
No, before that.
Ohio State, Alabama, and Georgia.
Alabama and Georgia can't both be undefeated.
Well, I'm thinking if you're taking a one-loss SEC team that lost to Alabama, so that's what I was. I mean, so you basically to say is a one-loss Alabama or a one-loss Georgia a worse team than a Clemson or a Notre Dame? And I don't think you can. I think you have to take both of those teams likely. And then at that point, it comes down to Notre Dame versus Clemson. Clemson's been in it a couple times, but they're also, Trevor Lawrence is going to be a stud, but he's a freshman, man. There's a chance they lose a game or two, maybe. And if they don't, do you really think that team's better than a Notre Dame that also is going to bring in a shitload of revenue for the college football playoff team?
Yeah, so from what we saw this year, no, I don't. Clemson realistically could have 2 losses. They could have lost to Texas A&M, who Alabama destroyed after that, and they could have lost to Syracuse at home. And I know that Lawrence got hurt in that game, but they were losing when he was playing. So, I don't see it. And then, you also look at a team like West Virginia. What if West Virginia runs the table in the Big 12? Even if all of that happens, which it won't, some of these teams will lose, and maybe Notre Dame loses. Notre Dame's undefeated; they're getting in.
I agree. Real quick, it is kind of interesting that in that Syracuse game, was it Chase Bryce? Is that his name? The backup quarterback for Clemson. That he comes in and everyone acts like, "Oh my God, Clemson! This backup quarterback, how did he do it? What an underdog story!" That bastard is a 4-star recruit. He is a higher rated recruit than any quarterback Iowa has gotten in a very long time. First of all, why did he choose Clemson when they had Deshaun Watson, they had Kelly Bryant, and then now they have Trevor Lawrence, right? So what is he doing there, first of all? And then second of all, how do you possibly consider that an underdog story? The guy is a 4-star recruit.
Yeah, but he started the season as 3rd string. I don't know.
Behind the 5-star the starter from last year.
Yeah, I don't know. Okay, so we're way off on tangents that don't talk about the Big Ten. So that's fine. But yeah, dude, I don't understand why these guys go where they go. Besides the fact that Bryce was a 2017 recruit and Lawrence was a 2018 recruit. So when Bryce went to Clemson, he probably didn't know that the number one quarterback in the country and number one recruit in the country was also going to go to Clemson. So he was probably pissed when that happened. But like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know why these guys don't just pick a school like Nebraska and go be a stud and play. But
yeah, that's what I would do. I would even go one step below. I'd pick like University of Houston,
like Iowa probably.
No, Iowa's not a step below. Maybe like Iowa State.
Yeah,
because you're playing against weak Big 12 defenses. Anyways, we have digressed significantly from the Big Ten. That is all that we have for this week's episode. As you've probably realized, if you are one of the 10 listeners, shout out to Logan, Tyler, Josh, my wife, and I think that's probably it. Thank you for listening. We are basically posting these every Thursday morning. We're doing these podcasts on Wednesday nights. And again, if you are one of those few people who are listening to this, please, please, please like and subscribe to this podcast. It helps us get more notoriety and recognition when you're looking through iTunes podcast or Apple podcasts, and maybe someone outside of our friend group is going to listen to this at some point. So Ryan, any parting words for your poor Nebraska soul?
No, I think you pretty much covered it. We'll be back next week with another one. So thanks to the 8 people that listen that you listed.
Andrew and Ryan signing off.